Welcome back. My name is Nancy Mader, and I am the Director of Transition Services for the Federation for Children with Special Needs, also known as the Link Center. And I am here with my colleague, Leslie, the Director of our MassPAC project. And we are covering part 2 of our Basic Rights Transition Planning webinar series. So under this part 2, we're going to talk about the student's vision, which is really kind of the most important part of transition planning. Wouldn't you agree, Leslie? All right, we've already covered this. We have the Parent Training and Information Center and the Link Center. Please visit our website at fcsn.org for more information.
Make sure you go to Nancy's website, the Link Center. It's really chock full of stuff.
It is. Chock full is a really good term for it. So today we're talking about vision in part 2. Part 3, we're going to talk more about developing the plan, and then we're going to talk about potential services and supports needed after graduation in part 4. Leslie, you just want to
talk my guiding principle again. IDEA, our Individuals with Disability Education Act, really wants to make sure that all students with disabilities have available to them that FAPE, that free and appropriate public education. Our students have barriers, so they need supports and services. And that's what special education is. It's the instruction and the related services based on an individualized education plan. It's meeting the students' unique needs, and it's really preparing them for life after high school, further education, employment, and independent living. It's really got a legal basis, not only in IDEA, but in our state law. It's all wrapped up so that we have the regulations to support that every student for the IP beginning at age 14 up until 22, the age of 22, they have the right to transition services. And those are individually driven by the student vision, which is what we're going to get to today. And all of these other laws support the student and the planning and all of the rights that the student has to explore the world of future education, employment opportunities, and to build a life that they can be a participant in our communities.
And if you need to go back over it, we covered this in part 1. So if you need
part
more,
1, a lot more.
Okay, so students' vision. So transition services are driven by the student. So before 14, it's the parent's vision for their child. They talk about different things that they want for their child, you know, what they want their schooling to look like, what their life should look like. And when they turn 14, it's 100% what that student wants to do. And it might change every year, and it might be really hard for that student to determine what their vision is. And it might not look like, you know, at life after high school. It might be their vision for the next year. And it hopefully does change, because it means that they're learning and they're exploring things. And this is one way you can talk to your child about their vision, because, you know, they're teenagers, and you're going to say, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they're going to be like, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so I mean, it's hard to say. But you can ask them questions that are more specific, and they can even just be, you know, mapping out what their life looks like right now. You know, what's their recreation and social activities? What are their favorite things? What sports are they in? Do they volunteer or have a job or do chores? You know, what's their personality like? Who are the people in their life? You know, all of those different things can help you kind of define what their vision might be, what their likes are, and maybe even more important, what their dislikes are and what they don't want their life to look like.
So I like this because it's a graphic, and when a family says to me, well, my student's nonverbal, how do I communicate the vision to the team? I'm like, use a graphic like this, and in place of all of those bubbles, put their favorite sport that they might like to watch or participate in. a recreational activity that they do. Maybe the fact that they're volunteering and you've got a picture of the library because they're helping out at the library. It's put together a visual so that the team is informed and the student can communicate their vision themselves. How important is that? That the student says, this is what I want to do. And the team responds and plans an academic and transitional program so that they can achieve their vision.
Right. So this is another tool that you can use to kind of come to a vision statement. These are free tools. It's called the Charting the Life course. And they have a whole toolkit for, mapping out services and, you can kind of almost map out every part of a young person's life, old person's life, child. I mean, you can use these tools. They're pretty diverse and they're pretty versatile. But this one here is the life trajectory worksheet. So what does a good life look like to your student, to your loved one? And what do they not want it to look like? Sometimes it's easier. I did vocational evaluation and talked to students over a lot of years, and I could ask them what they wanted their life to look like, and they wouldn't be able to tell me, but a lot of times they would be able to tell me what they didn't want. They didn't want to live at home for the rest of their life, or they didn't want to not have a job. There are different things that they could say. They didn't know what kind of job they wanted, but they could say that they didn't want to not have one. So I think that those questions to drive what they want, and honestly, I have to say this again, it should change year to year because they've had experiences with their vision the previous year. So if you want to be a graphic designer when you are 14, that's your vision, and you get some experience with that field and you decide, oh, I don't really like it as much as I thought I did, then it can change. Or maybe it reinforces it and they want to be it even more so and they want to add something else to it.
What's interesting about this process is even on the IEP, where it has the vision part, it says that beginning when the student turns 14, this should reflect what the student wants. And so you have to have conversations with your student prior to the meeting to talk about vision, to talk about what they want to do, what they're thinking of doing. It's something that is a conversation that you have with the student prior. It can happen in school, but it can also happen at home. It can happen with, if you participate in this Charting a Life course, bringing more people to talk to the student and to help them understand what their strengths are, and then putting that into a vision. But it will reflect the student's vision on the IEP during transition time.
Right. I think these tools do a really good job of having a family, and family is very broad. Think about all the resources in their life. When a student, says maybe something they're interested in, you can think of the people that you know in that field or who might have a business like that, where you can expose them to that. It doesn't all have to happen in school. It can all happen in school, but it should be reinforced in both places to really impact the student. So family discussions before age 2. Leslie, you have experience in this. I'm going to let you go forward with it.
My students are older. But I think families have got to tackle some tough questions about what is a student going to do all day. For those students that are graduating, going on to community college or college, the pathway is a little bit more clear for the next couple of years. But for a student that's aging out of the school system at age 22, we have to kind of figure out what's the plan, because things will change very quickly for them from a very structured environment to a non-structured environment. And if we can plan so it's as seamless as possible when they move from a school environment into a day hab program, into a volunteer environment, into part working and part activities, we have to talk about it. So you don't have to have all the answers right now. I still have a 25-year-old son living with us because he hasn't gotten everything figured out yet. And that's okay. It's just trying to anticipate some of the questions and plan for it. And understanding that it is more of a adult service driven world after high school at age 22.
Right, and adult services are eligibility based and they're needs based. You know, they depend on what funding the state has. So just things to think about that maybe you can prepare for before they leave high school. So how do you answer these questions? You know, what do you need to know? And as someone who did vocational evaluation for transitioning youth for a long time, my reports and my testing was better when there was a question behind it. So, you know, there's transition assessment. There's not a specific one. There's not like a box, as our friend Lisa Fournier always says. There's not a box of transition assessment like, you know, a psychological exam or, you know, all those assessments have really, you know, specific tools. But this testing is going to be driven by the questions that you have about this student. And here's what the law says about it. And Leslie, do you have anything further on the law?
Age appropriate. So it really depends. A student looks very, very different at age 14 than they will look at 20. And it really, you have to decide in terms of planning on an IEP, and the skills that you want to be addressed is answering that question. And if you don't know the answer to the question, then you look for assessments. I think what's really nice is that there's formal and informal assessments, and we learn sometimes so much from the data that the teacher's taking in on a day-to-day basis of how student follows directions and stays, you know, attentive to a task. That's just as important as some formal battery of assessments.
Yeah, let's see here.
Here they come in.
These
are some of those questions that might drive assessments and understanding, you know, what do you need to know about your child? And if you look at some of these, it's do the student have independent skills? Are they self-driven? And how they approach problem solving is a lot of the adult world skill base that we're looking for.
Right. And they can be really simple questions. What do you want to know? Like, if they're 14, they should be pretty basic questions, and maybe they're getting more detailed as they're closer to exiting high school. You know, can he or she follow multiple step directions, and how many steps? So if it's 2, you know, that means they need a lot of supervision. And so that's something you can start working on earlier. Can he or she work in a group? If they're going to college, all of it's group-based. I mean, it was group-based 20 years ago, and it's only increased. So, you know, different things. If they, you know, whatever questions you have, write them down and see what kind of assessment can be done, and they can be very informal. Or you might not know about some assessments that have been taking place at school where they can help you answer that question. This here, so this green brochure on the side of this slide talks about assessment. That's one of the tips brochures that we worked on with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here. And then we also did a linked over lunch with Kelly Challen, who works for NESCA, and we talked even further about assessment. So, you know, there's more in-depth information out there with the Federation that you can talk about.
One of the questions here that really points to me why transition is important for all students, especially even those students with IEPs that are going on to college, is look at the one that says, can you write a 5-paragraph essay? Well, all
Right.
Students going to college have got to complete some kind of application process, and the 5-paragraph essay is key to that process. It's not going to happen in 1 year in junior year. You need a planning process to get the student to have that incorporated into their English language arts goal, their reading and writing goal from freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, so they're ready. It's not going to happen in 1 year. This is skill building, and you need to break that down. So the planning process around transition is so important for all students, even those who are going on to college.
Yes. So the students' role in transition planning, I mean, really, they're the star of the show, right? So they should be involved in it as much as possible. And like we said, they're your best informant. They can tell you what's working and what's not, what they like and what they don't. You know, it's their vision for their life. And I know Leslie and I are both parents of students who, you know, went through special education, and it's hard to back away and let those things happen. But if you want your student to buy in and own their special education, it has to be based around them, has to be their goals, their future that they see. And, you know, and maybe in your mind, you think that that might not be realistic, but that's where providing them with opportunities to learn about the things that they think that they want to do helps them to make informed choices. It might solidify that goal for them, and it might teach them that they really don't want to do it.
And I love this, talking about high expectations for students. When you as a team and educators and family around that student set high expectations for the students themselves will be like, wow, you think I can do that? And I'm like, let's try. If you don't set that high expectation, you're not going to reach it. So that's really should be a driving force behind the student vision, is setting those high expectations and then helping the student give it a shot. Let's try to make this happen for you. Let's give you the experiences that you need to determine, is this realistic? Not saying no from the get-go.
Right, but that doesn't mean just throwing them into, you know, into a field. You know, it can be in a protected environment where they get, you know, small experiences and build on those. So this can be something that's really well planned out and thought of, and you know, you can make sure. And I don't think failure is bad, but you know, they can fail in a way that you can pick them up and, you know, not completely crash. Self-determination and self-advocacy are probably the greatest skills that we can give our young people.
This is my favorite brochure from Nancy. Got to read it.
This one is just, you know, just teaching them what their disability is, teaching them what accommodations they need. You know, I have a young third grader who has, you know, an IEP, and we talk about why he's on it, what the services are, why he needs those things, why he gets pulled out of class, why things are harder for him. Because otherwise, you know, he just thought he was dumb. You know, he just thought he couldn't do it because he wasn't smart enough, and that's not true. His brain's just wired differently, you know, and he's definitely smart enough. He just needs to learn it a different way. And I have him as a, you know, as a second and third grader, I've had him come into the IEP meetings so that he knows we're talking about him, and he can say, this works for me, this doesn't. You know, it's part of the process that I think is important for him, so that he understands, you know, why he's getting pulled out.
And I think it's something that has to be practiced. No student is going to like turn on a switch and become a self-advocate. And to me, the high school environment is like the perfect place where you can even write it into the IEP, that the student will meet with each one of their teachers on a quarterly basis or right before the end of the marking period, to talk to that teacher of like, how am I doing in your class? How can I do better in the class? Right. This is difficult for me in your class. How can we accommodate this in my plan? By starting that in high school, they'll be able to do that wherever they go. If they went into a job environment and wanted to ask for accommodations, they've already practiced it. They know how to do it. So this is something that needs to be taught to the student. They need to practice it. And there's no reason why this accommodation and this type of skill building can't be built into an IEP.
Super early. I mean, I can't tell you how many students I saw when I was an evaluator who didn't think they were didn't know they were on an IEP, didn't think they had a disability, and that we're doing them a disservice there. So they don't have to come for the whole meeting. You know, they can come for parts of it. They can just come and say hello. Everyone in the room can say something positive about them. You know, whatever it is, just start getting them involved. It can be before 14. You know, talk to the school about it, you know, whatever it is, just start helping them to see themselves, because it's really powerful.
So I always think that, you know, there's no right one way to do any of this. It's really helping the student, help them realize a vision, articulate it, let everyone know what they want to do, having the team help them build the skills that they need. And as parents, you can help provide different opportunities for them to test it out. I always think we shouldn't say no to a student. We should give them the opportunity to try something in a supported way so that
Right.
they can make the determination, oh, I really don't like doing this. I want to try this instead. And if we waited till the age of 22 to wait for a student to have that unique opportunity, it may not work for them at that point, and then they don't have the school to support them anymore.
Right.
So the more we can be part of a team to let kids realize their vision, test it out, and get some feedback on it and help plan is really the best method.
Absolutely.
Take a walk in the woods.
Yeah. Choose which path you're going to take. So we've just posted some timelines here. Sometimes this is really helpful just to, like, especially if you're, in this portion that's before 14, to pick one of these up and you can see which one you like to read the most. The Autism Commission has a timeline for transition. In our book, our transition guidebook, we have a very simple timeline, but it's helpful to know what's coming up, especially if you have a 14-year-old, and to understand what happens when they turn 18. So if you can start thinking about that beforehand, because everything changes. They're an adult, and you have to have conversations around that. So take a look, Google some timelines, see which one that you think you might like. But here's just a couple. The ARC has a great one,
because it really goes up to age 22, and
yeah.
It helps those of us who are parents not get so overwhelmed.
Yes.
Like when the student's 16, you should be thinking about maybe some part-time jobs, not where they're going to live at age 28. It
Right.
puts in motion a planning process of things that might be coming up, and helps ground you in, like, okay, this is developmentally where my student is, and this is what I should be working on.
Right.
It helps with de-stressing this whole process, and just laying out some guidelines for you to plan.
It's like starting your day with a checklist. This is what you want to get done.
A really big checklist.
Yeah, but it's helpful. So take a look. And then, we went through this in part one, but we'll go, briefly through it here. Just staying informed, becoming, a member of one of these groups, either our listserv, the Facebook page, Massachusetts Transition to Adulthood, which is,
and the power of what parents who have gone through this before, their experiences, and having the opportunity to discuss things or run ideas by other parents. That's been the key to what the Federation's all about. It started by parents, for parents, and just sharing information, ideas, and resources. It's really key.
Yep, absolutely. So the next slide, Will. At our Planning a Life conferences, parents meet each other and network and, share information, and it's so powerful. We usually have 3 to 4 Planning a Life conferences every single year. This year will be different. Leslie and I are going to try to put together a Planning a Life virtually. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. But also, once we're out of quarantine and next school year has, started up, visit our website to look for dates. It's a great day.
It is a great day.
More resources, and these were in the previous webinar, but check them out. And then this is a basic rights.
Basic rights workshops. We just want to let everyone know who's only tuning in for part 2 that you always have the right to disagree with your IEP team. The recommendation at the Federation is that you talk to your team, maybe have another meeting, maybe meet with someone to go over what's not working for you.
Right.
A lot of times you can accept an IEP in part and reject in part. And so you have lots of options. Here you see a continuum of green to red. If you're not getting services, you can connect to your Department of Education and get those services that are outlined in your plan. The middle section is where you meet in the middle and getting a mediator to maybe come in and bring both sides together and to come up with a compromise solution to be able to deliver more services to your student. But when you hit the red, that should be stop. I probably need an attorney at this point. It's the Board of Special Education Appeals is a legal resolution to your problem, and we just advise that you have legal assistance when you kind of move into those areas that are much more legally evidence-driven.
Right. More
And we're
options
always
are
a free
here.
phone call. You know,
I
the
know.
Federation is here. We're open during school closure. You can call our call center. You can submit an online form and people can get back to you. I believe we're having one night, we have evening hours. Somebody can call
Thursday
you back.
evening hours.
Trying to make information and resources as accessible as possible. For those families that speak English as a second language, we have outreach support staff that can talk to you in your own language. There's lots
Yeah.
happening. Check out our website, come to our web page for more up-to-date resources as the school closure goes on. And we're trying to make more things available to you virtually. So thanks for